So I'll kick us off with the idea of you versus you, which I think is quite an important thing to think about at youth level, even actually in senior level. It gets us thinking about our own performance and creates the best bridge, I guess, to the next path of our progression. So how have you found players, as you just were touching on there, sometimes when they have dips, it can be difficult, but going back to the you versus you, how has that been like I guess a productive tool for you?
Really productive. So again, when we're looking at the players, it's really easy to look at their game first of all. So the you versus you, again, we're not going to have that massive jump in their ability from week to week. So if you're looking at a specific player and their positioning and what they can do quality-wise within it, you versus you helps them focus in on that and again get less distracted. So in my arena right now at under 18s, some of the players have gone on loan to play first team football. Some of the players are already playing in the first team at our club. So we have the example of a centre back might be the year younger. So again, 18s, you can be 16, 17 or 18 playing in it. So a younger player might make the first team before a player. Now, if he looks sideways for comparison, his head goes, he gets frustrated, he loses his focus. Whereas the you versus you really helps him to focus back and be like, right, this is your journey, this is your career. Things happen for a reason. You might go up when you're ready and when you're best suited for that. So what we speak about is don't look sideways for comparison, but it's okay to look upwards for inspiration. So again, we use mirror players a lot, and Jack Grealish is probably one of my favourite players because he speaks about it openly in interviews. So I've got a few examples of Jack Grealish speaking about the influence Kevin De Bruyne has on him. So he was saying that last year, when he looked at his stats, his XG and his assist rate was really, really low. So what he did was he started looking at De Bruyne's game. Now he accepts that he's a different player from De Bruyne, but De Bruyne was the best in that position. So he actively went to look to see what he was doing differently to try and take elements of his game to improve it into his. So that's fine. And that's actually a really useful tool. So he's a youth player. So you imagine like at 12, 13, 14, players will have idols, whether that's Messi, Ronaldo. So you can use mirror players to help that and challenge that. But at the end of the day, always coming back to you versus you, gives them something that's realistic to challenge themselves and to better themselves. So when they turn up to training, we say that all the time. It's not possible for every player on the pitch. So if you've got 20 players at training, it's not possible for all 20 players to be the best player on that pitch. But it's possible for every player to be the best version of them that day. And then if you do that every single day over 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you'll see progression.
Superb, excellent. The idea of mirroring players in your position. And then I guess that stops you from, looking sideways, which can be distracting and get you into a bit of a negative spiral. But yeah, that's a really good idea. And the fact that, you've got a professional like Jack Grealish, who everyone can see visibly, advocating for that technique, I think that's great. Another thing I picked out was your kind of almost like scientific way of finding out where it's breaking down. So you've got, the clips I think you showed with the Rangers player, the name escapes me, but you were showing how his passing ideas, his decision-making basically was correct, but the technique was wrong or insufficient for those areas. So just talk us through again, that idea of being able to diagnose correctly where things are breaking down.
Yeah, so there's two parts to that. Part of the diagnosis would be you as a coach and your eye and your knowledge and experience, but also just asking the player. So if I think about my squad currently, I've got 2 centre mids and their passes fail for different reasons. So one of their passes fail because they never scan. So they're very reactive rather than being proactive. So the reason that their passes fail is they have less time to assess the best option. Whereas my other player scans brilliantly, one of the best scanning scores I've seen, but their technique right now, because they've not developed the power in their legs to strike it properly in the pitches that we're playing on, because he's playing a couple of years above himself. So again, it's having that understanding that when you're working with a player, what their needs are. So again, I said there that youth football for me is an individual sport. So we assess a lot of our training time during the week to not only training practice as a team, but individual time as well. So it might be double sessions, it might be during the session. So if you've got an hour and a half, for example, you might say, right, 40 minutes is going to be team, and then 30 minutes you're going to break up into either groups of 2 and 3, depending on your position. So you could either do the same position or you can change positions. So for example, if you've got a winger that wants to work on crossing, and a defender that wants to work on first contacts and defensive headers, you can pair them together. And then that way they're working on their own aspects of their game to really focus it, to then come back into the team element. Because if you only worked on the team at all times, you don't get the chance to do that in terms of players, and also that repetition in that environment, they lose that time.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. I'm mindful of your time, Cameron, so I'll wrap this up fairly swiftly. So guys, firstly, thanks for tuning in, spending your time with us. I know this is a bit of a different time slot than we're used to, so thanks for that. So final question for me is, if you could recommend us, perhaps those of us who are working at a grassroots level, maybe we don't have the time or the video technology available, what sort of small things could we do to integrate the scanning culture, that scanning idea, to our players?
If you can't track it, and I get that, and I know I'm very fortunate that I can go and do that, I would just make a conscious effort to make sure you reference it during the sessions. Because if you look at coaches and their studies done to analyze the information we provide and how we do that, we speak so much about either positional stuff or we speak about the technique, but we don't reference the scan. So we don't ask the player why he played that pass, what other options he had. So there's loads of different fun games you can play with kids, depending on what age group you're working at, where it's like, right, stand still, freeze, close your eyes, right, who can tell me where the opponents are, who can tell me where the ball is, like really silly little things like that. If you're working with the smaller kids, having decision elements within your training. So again, everyone's guilty of this when they first start. They want their session to be so neat and tidy. They want things to look good. So you're like, right, player A goes to here and he runs there. And we take every single decision element away from the player. So they're just becoming little robots, basically. And most of the time, it's to make that simple for coaches, they end up following the ball, which is the worst thing they can do in football, is run after the ball. But when we want to do like an unopposed technical practice, it's simple for us as coaches to say, oh, listen, just follow your pass. And it keeps it nice and neat and tidy. And it's very messy sometimes if you've got 2 or 3 different options or players running apart. So again, some simple exercises that you can do. Say you've got 10 players, 5 in one bib, 5 in another bib. They've got a ball each. There's no defenders. But because they'll be moving about in the same area, it's that active pressure. So they've got to play through players. You can then challenge them, right? Who can play the most passes that go between players? If you want to talk about breaking lines, who can receive the ball in the tightest area? So all those different things encourages scanning, because in order for them to play that pass, they need to see what's going on behind them. When you're doing unopposed practices, little things like shouting up or holding up colours or cones during dribbling practices, things when you're doing passing, having at least 2 options that the player can pass to all the time. So it's not right, you need to play the ball from cone A to cone B to cone C. It's right, the ball might go cone A to cone B, but then at that point, you've got 2 options. You can go left or right. And going left or right might depend on the player sitting up or standing down. So then they've got to make the decision who's free. It could be a colour. It could be the player facing one way and facing the other way. So it's really quick, and you can get those players, depending on the age groups, to change it up and down. So I might be facing you when you scan the first time and then turn my back, so you've got to scan again. So finding ways to challenge your players, and I guess put them in as many situations as possible where they're making decisions repetitively. Would be my answer to that. If you can't track it in that way, we can at least facilitate it in every single session.
Excellent. Really good answer. Yeah, that just leaves me to say thank you for guys who are watching this on YouTube, I guess, and as well as you guys here live. And then Cameron, final words to you. Thank you so much.
No worries. And please do take contact details, and I'm more than happy to answer any more questions and continue the conversation. But thanks for inviting me, and it's been a pleasure.